Marabel Cain watched her husband die without being able to scream. The shovel came down hard, and the sound it made was not like a strike. It was like dry wood snapping in winter. Harlan's body dropped to the dirt floor, his eyes still open, his mouth frozen as if he had tried to speak one last word. Marabel felt her knees weaken, but fear held her upright like invisible chains. The three men stood over the body, breathing hard. Sloan wiped sweat from his brow. Griggs kicked a broken chair aside. Teller looked around the ruined house with wild eyes. Furniture lay smashed. Mattresses were ripped open. Cabinets were torn from the walls. Everything was destroyed, yet the gold they wanted was nowhere to be found. "Where is it?" Teller shouted, his voice cracking with rage. Harlan did not answer. He never got the chance. Their anger turned toward Marabel. Sloan grabbed her arm and dragged her onto the porch. Griggs threw a rope over a rotting wooden beam. Teller tied the knot with shaking hands. Marabel tried to fight, but her strength was nothing against theirs. "Please," she cried. "It hurts." Sloan kicked the chair away. The rope snapped tight around her neck. The world narrowed into pain and darkness. Her lungs burned. Her hands clawed at the air. Then the beam cracked. Old wood finally gave up. Marabel crashed onto the porch floor, gasping like a fish pulled from water. She was alive. The men shouted in confusion. In that moment, Marabel crawled back inside the house. Her fingers brushed against an old wooden chest hidden under the table. She grabbed it without thinking and ran into the night. Blood smeared the ground behind her as she fled, her legs burning, her throat on fire. The men chased her, their curses tearing through the dark. Marabel ran until the world tilted. Her legs failed. She collapsed at the gate of a lonely farm, where the land lay empty and silent, untouched by town or neighbor. Darkness closed in around her, and everything went still. Jonas Mercer had not planned on company that night. He sat by his unfinished forge, shaping iron by habit more than need. The wind shifted, carrying a sharp scent that made him stand. Blood. Then something crashed outside. Jonas reached for his old Winchester rifle, the same one that had followed him through war. He stepped onto the porch with calm steps, the kind learned in places where panic meant death. By the gate lay a woman. Her body was curled tight, her breath thin. A dark mark circled her neck, deep and angry. Beside her rested a blood-stained wooden chest. Jonas knelt and touched her neck. Warm, alive. He lifted her carefully, like someone who had carried too many broken men before. Inside the house, he laid her on the table and pressed a clean cloth to her throat. He opened an old army medical kit with steady hands. "Can you hear me?" he asked. Her eyes fluttered open. One word slipped out, broken and weak. "There." Coming. Jonas did not ask who. He listened instead. Hooves, distant, steady. Hunting. He pulled back the rug near the fireplace, revealing a steel trapdoor. He had built it after the war for reasons he never spoke about. It led to a shelter beneath the house, tight and hidden. "Get in," he whispered. He carried her down and sat her beside a water barrel. He pressed a small pistol into her shaking hand. "Stay quiet," he said. "Let me take care of the rest." Marabel nodded. Fear filled her eyes, but something stronger lived behind it. The will of someone who had already touched death and refused to stay there. Jonas closed the door, covered it with the rug, and blew out the lamp. Darkness wrapped the house. The hooves grew louder. Laughter followed, cruel and drunk. The men rode into the yard, bringing with them the smell of sweat and cheap liquor. Sloan jumped down first. Griggs followed. Teller held a lantern, its light shaking. She ran this way. Sloan growled. Jonas stood still in the dark. He did not breathe loud. He did not move. No. The forge still gave off faint heat, casting weak red light across metal and shadow. The door slammed open. "Hey, rancher," Griggs barked. "We know you're in there." The lantern light cut through the room, but it found nothing. Nothing except darkness and silence. Jonas saw everything. They split up. One moved left. One stepped forward. One stayed near the door. That was their mistake. Jonas slipped behind the forge, becoming part of the shadow. His fingers brushed cold iron and old chains. His eyes followed every breath, every step. The night held its breath, and somewhere beneath the floor, Marabel Cain waited, listening to the sound of men who had already tried to kill her, unaware that the rancher who pulled her out of hell was about to step back into it himself. The first sound was metal scraping wood. Slow, careful. Jonas moved without haste, like a man who knew the dark better than light. Griggs stepped closer to the forge, his boots crunching on scattered tools. He lifted the lantern higher, squinting, trying to make sense of the heat still breathing from the iron. What kind of fool keeps a forge burning at night? Griggs muttered. Jonas answered with steel. The chain slipped around Griggs's neck in one smooth motion. Jonas pulled hard, dragging him backward into the shadow. His boots kicked, knocking over a rack of tools. Metal clanged loud and sharp. Teller spun toward the noise. Griggs. Jonas hurled a hammer across the room, slammed into the far wall, echoing like a gunshot. Teller swung the lantern that way, his hands shaking. Sloane stiffened. Someone's in here. Before he could raise his rifle, Jonas moved again. The chain snapped tight around Sloane's neck. Sloane fought like a bull, dragging Jonas a step across the floor. Jonas wrapped the chain around a support beam and drove his knee into Sloane's face. Bone cracked. Sloane dropped hard, choking, his strength draining into the dirt. The lantern slipped from Teller's hand and shattered. Darkness swallowed the house whole. Panic filled the room. Teller backed into a corner, breathing fast. He fumbled for his gun, but Jonas was already there. A blow from an iron bar sent Teller crashing to the floor. Jonas loomed over him, silent and steady. He dragged Teller toward the forge, the dying embers casting a red glow across Teller's face. "Where is she?" Teller sobbed. "We just wanted the gold." "You hanged her," Jonas said, his voice low. Teller broke. Words poured out. A rumor, a joke in a saloon. A man bragging about gold he hid for his wife. One clean shot ended it. Silence returned. Only the forge crackled softly. Jonas opened the trap door. Light spilled down onto Marabel's face. Her eyes searched his. "It's over," he said. She trembled. The chest. Jonas lifted the lid. No gold. Only memories. A photo. A necklace. A life stolen for nothing. Marabel collapsed into sobs. Of another senseless death settle into his bones. Later, in the stable, Jonas found the truth, hidden beneath the dirt. A second chest, heavy, locked. He opened it. Gold burned bright in the lantern light. Marabel dropped to her knees. "He did it for me," she whispered. And it killed him. Jonas closed the lid. "Gold does not heal wounds," he said. "It only opens them." The night grew quiet. But dawn was coming, and with it, a choice neither of them could escape. Dawn came slowly, like the land itself was unsure it wanted to see what the night had left behind. Pale yellow light crept over the Mercer Valley, brushing the hills and fences without warmth. Mist hung low, thin and silent, hiding nothing but softening everything. Jonas stood outside with a shovel in his hands. The ground was cold and stubborn. Marabel watched from a short distance, a cloth wrapped around her neck, her fingers gripping it as if it was the only thing keeping her upright. Harlan's body lay on a simple wooden cart. There was no preacher, no townfolk, no prayers spoken aloud. "Are you ready?" Jonas asked quietly. Marabel nodded. She did not trust her voice. They chose a hill overlooking the valley. Harlan had liked this place. Marabel had once told Jonas he said the light reached it late, but it always came. Jonas pushed the shovel into the soil. Each strike felt heavier than the last. Every sound of dirt breaking felt final. When the grave was ready, Jonas lowered Harlan in. Marabel stepped forward, her knees shaking, but she did not fall. She placed the embroidered handkerchief on her husband's chest, the same one she had pulled from the small wooden box. "I forgive you," she whispered. "Not because you were right, but because I cannot live carrying anger." The wind moved through the grass, steady and low. Jonas covered the grave. When it was done, they stood in silence. Nothing more needed to be said. Back at the house, the chest of gold sat in the middle of the room. Sunlight spilled across it, cruel in how beautiful it made the bars look. Marabel stared at it like it was a living thing. "This gold killed him," she said. "It almost killed me." Jonas nodded. "Then it should have no place in your future." Marabel took a long breath. "I do not want it. I do not want to sell it, hide it, or carry it. I want it gone." They carried the chest beyond the far hill where the land showed no tracks and no memory. Jonas dug deep, deeper than the grave. When the chest rested at the bottom, Marabel knelt beside the hole. "Harlan," she said softly, "I am leaving your gift here so I can keep living." Jonas filled the hole. When the ground was smooth again, there was nothing to mark it. Number, sign of gold, no sign of death. They walked back in silence. Days passed slowly. Marabel healed. The bruises faded, but the mark on her neck stayed, faint but real. Jonas never asked her to leave. He never asked her to stay. He worked the land, fixed fences, fed the horses. Marabel began to help without being asked. One evening, she stood beside Jonas at the fence, watching the sun fall. "I have nowhere else to go," she said. "This ranch is quiet." Jonas replied, "Quiet can be good." She looked at him. I stay." Jonas nodded. "If you wish." That night, the house felt different. Not full, not healed, but no longer empty. Weeks later, the valley bloomed green. Marabel laughed for the first time while feeding the horses. Jonas heard it and froze. Like a man unsure the sound was real. Pain did not vanish. Loss did not fade. But something new grew in its place. Trust, respect, a steady presence beside each other. Love did not arrive like a promise. It came quietly, built from shared silence and shared work. From choosing to stand instead of run, and in the wide land where cruelty once chased a woman to death, two broken lives found a reason to keep breathing when the sun rose again.